Just a quick reminder that if you want to support Concepts and Legends, please remember to like and subscribe. And you can also show your support by using our TCG affiliate link for any and all of your Magic needs by using the link you see here or below in the description. Any and all help is greatly appreciated and helps us bring you more videos like the one that is starting right now. Hello everyone! Today's interview is with both an MTG artist and a college art professor who taught me I thought you just said something.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Sorry.
Okay.
Hello everyone! Today's interview is with both an MTG artist and a college art professor who taught me a thing or two about art, which is great, because what I currently know about art adds up to a thing or three, possibly four. But enough about my substandard intellect. It's time for the interview. Let's get into it.
Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure.
Okay, so from what I've read, growing up, you came from not necessarily an artistic family, but a family involved in the arts, correct?
Yeah. My parents were primarily involved with music, and as such, my brother and I got dragged to a lot of, I shouldn't say dragged, asked to take part in a lot of musical activities, either in church or even in school as well. But the whole visual art thing just kind of came out of nowhere, kind of blindsided all of us actually.
And you were the only one except in your family, except your grandfather was the one who also was artistic as well, or at least in the visual sense.
Yeah. Going through after he passed, going through a bunch of the materials at the estate, we found sketchbooks. There were paintings, and in fact, even some actual paints. And I actually used a palette knife that my grandpa used way back when. So yeah.
Oh, that's cool, actually.
Yeah.
So you have like a family like I don't want to say relic because that makes it sound like it's like really old,
Right.
but you know what I mean?
Artifact.
There we go. Yeah, Magic the Gathering. I was like, that would have been brilliant of me, but it's brain fart. Okay, so what's interesting about your story with Magic, and from what I've gathered, at least from what I've read online, is that a lot of your work with Magic, I think you're not as happy with it as you are with the stuff that you've done now, and I understand that, but it's almost like when you go to your website, it's almost like you blink and you miss it if just to find out that you actually did Magic art. And I just wanted to get a little bit of your take on why that is and why you feel like starting out in Magic you were not as good as you are now.
A lot of that has to do with where I felt I was as a professional. I felt I had a very professional attitude coming into the business, but when it came to like confidence in the work I was doing, and in fact my entire run of Magic work, you could take a look at it as an evolution of style. Right after the very first card I did, which was Storm Elemental for Alliances, I changed up like everything. I went from what I was doing with what I was more comfortable with doing in school when I was, taking classes and everything, was airbrush, acrylic paint, and colored pencil. That was home base. But I looked at what my friends and peers were doing, and it just seemed like, wow, they can go so much faster using paint. And so almost literally overnight, I made a jump into, trying to paint in oils, never taking any classes or any like professional instruction on it. So there's especially the early run of Magic things, although occasionally a concept or two, I'd be happy with, but I was very timid and tentative with how I used the paint. I tried a bunch of different things, some mixed media, but you can tell by the time, a few years go by, the paintings look like, they're a little more complex. The color is a little more rich or something. I think I maybe hit my peak with the oil paint around Invasion. There's paintings in there like for Zap, Horned Cheetah.
Yeah, that one's cool.
Yeah, that where it's straight up oil, start to finish, without any kind of like gouache underpainting or sealant, on the whole thing, just to get me started with the different media. That's part of it. Although I will tell you that going to conventions and talking with, game fans and people who want to get cards signed and everything, it didn't take long for me to understand and appreciate that it's not so much what I think about what the card looks like, or it's like, oh man, I really could have done a better job on that. It's what that card represents to them. The card itself may have like particular memories or certainly power, to it. And they have a connection to that. It's not so much what it looks like, it's what it is, what it actually is. Meaning that I have cards where I think it's some of the least least inspiring work I've done for like erratic portal from, I think is that Tempest? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
Or pyroclasm from Portal. I get requests for like artist proofs, for example, for a long time for this, that, and the other thing, and I'm just like, wow, I really didn't like what I did for that, and so I would never and I never did actually make like a print of it for anybody. But in hindsight, it's like, I wonder if people would actually go for that if I just swallow some pride.
Well,
And
yeah. Yeah, probably. And probably definitely. I mean, here's the thing. I've talked to a few of you early artists, and the response is overwhelming. I mean, people have such a deep rooted nostalgia, which I only started playing in 2019, so I'm a newbie, and so I just love the art. I just that was what sucked me in. But yeah, you guys have a following for sure.
That's cool.
But what I do want to focus on, because there definitely is an evolution, but I do want to talk about some of the pieces that I think are great, and that I wonder if I could get some of your thoughts on it. Now, one that I would love to bring that I never even actually got to see because I never got to play it, was Nature Demands an Offering. That is a cool piece of work. Now,
thank you.
Was that part of the brief, that the whole description of the guy being pulled underground? How did that come about?
Yeah, for that, I think they were fairly specific with what they asked for. And if you've talked to a bunch of the older guard, they've probably said the same thing, that descriptions back in the day could be pretty vague. In fact,
yeah,
there was a time when there was no style guide, that had, okay, if we want to play with this race, we have a storyline, we have this kind of creature, here's what their armor looks like, etc. But I think actually for Nature Demands, there was no style guide for it that I remember, but they did ask for, natural, some part of the natural world, like, uprooting and like pulling something. And they may have specifically asked for a weapon being broken or shattered by it, hence, what's happening with the sword. But I want to say that I remember doing the armor on that guy, for example, and yeah, I don't remember going after any style guide for that. That was all, just pulled out of the head. So
do you obviously, I mean, a lot of people do this, but the character faces of some of your work, the people's faces are just so animated and so lifelike. I feel that they're almost familiar in some sense. Are these sometimes the same people that model for you, or that you base them off of? Are you one of those artists that maybe puts yourself in certain things, or family members as well?
yeah, completely and totally. In fact, the gentleman who modeled for Nature Demands an Offering, it's a gentleman named Steve Port, and he ran quite a few like local tournaments and events, for Magic in this area. I got to know him. He invited me to some, pre-release events, I think, back in the day, and I got to know him pretty well. And he and some of his friends agreed to model for me for a bunch of things, not just Magic, but also the Game of Thrones, it was CCG at that time. I think it's LCG, or they changed the terminology there. But yeah, he's been in a lot of pieces, and that's probably the favorite of all the ones I've ever used him for. So
yeah, it's definitely, it's got a fun, a sort of a fun feel to it, that a lot of the cards from that set, it's Arch Enemy, which it's not something that I mean, with the C word happening the past year, there's not a lot of in-group gameplay, but I never really got a chance to play it, and I see all this artwork, and I'm like, this stuff is fantastic. It's sort of like the precursor to the full art things that we're seeing today, and I don't know how familiar you are with what's happening in Magic now as far as artwork goes, but there's a lot more of that happening.
Yeah, well, to the extent that starting about 2 or 3 years ago, I started being contacted by people asking for original artwork, original sketches, as well as like proof cards. That's always kind of been in demand. And I have used official like signing services through Facebook, which that was my connection basically, primarily. And to be very honest, keeping it just as that made it far more manageable for me for the amount of stuff that came in. Meaning I may have included that in some of our earlier communication. I actually teach full time.
Yes.
And it means that there's a certain amount that I feel comfortable with, coming in and able to, produce. And I get to pick and choose a little bit for like some of the personal commissions, including like reinterpretations of paintings. That's where I've had the most fun over the last couple of years. So
I was going to ask about that. Which of it, I believe I saw online, at least I hope that it's you that did it, but it's the painting behind me, Shizo's, the Storehouse. You recreated or reinterpreted that one. Am I right?
Yep. In fact, if you,
Okay.
I was about to say,
Right.
if you look behind you,
Right.
the yellowing that's happening in some of those areas was a condition of me not using. I kind of got a little overzealous with using an additive, a dryer, to like speed up the drying time. And somebody had asked whether that painting was for sale, and I'm like, yeah, I can sell it. Just to let you know, there's some like damage to it. It's time and probably cost prohibitive for me to touch it up. And so I suggested, however, that's a hybrid that started life digitally, printed it out, sealed it, finished traditional. It'd be faster for me to kind of like start from the beginning, print it out, and use the paint in a similar way, but just not using any of the additives. So there's two versions of that out there. One, it's a little different. I went back in and used, changed a few little details here and there. But yeah, there are two versions out there.
And how does that work for somebody who's in Ignad when it comes to art and digital? And what, so like, 'cause in my mind, I'm imagining you have the painting, then you scan the painting, then you print it out on a giant printer, and then you sketch around it. And like, I mean, that's my simple brain kind of figuring out. So how do you take it from a digital like source that's the base? For instance, like one of the pieces you did with it was the Gollum with the stone. I have it written down. I'm mispronouncing it. It was a sand or stone Gollum. I'm sorry.
Sand.
Sand. Yes. The one that you did of it. You said you also started that one out digitally and then added some cracking and whatnot. What does that mean? As far as the process.
Yeah, that they this is something I also gleaned onto working for Magic, where I made it, I learned as best I could some oil paints, still found a way to make that take too long to get stuff done. So I'm like, well, can I take the best and then I started like fully digital, and Wizards, their art directors at the time, weren't crazy about that direction. And so they're like, no, we'd prefer to go back to traditional. But I tried a hybrid where it was trial and error, probably starting around Apocalypse. Oh boy, now I can't remember the name of the card now. It's
we can pull it up.
Mournful Zombie. Mournful Zombie.
Okay.
Where I was like, well, I'm starting to learn my computer stuff about this time, and I can do very, very simple backgrounds, or like lighting effects, glows, for example, take prohibitively long if you're trying to learn how to do it in oils, or at least it was in my case. I'm like, why don't I get that done at the start, print it out on paper, mount it on a piece of like sturdy board, seal it. There's things you can medium, gloss medium, matte medium, that you can basically paint on top of it, protect the surface. It's clear, and then you just paint on top of that. And anywhere where your actual physical paint doesn't, cover up anything, well, you've got the digital work right behind it. So it is a way to speed up, and it's still my preferred method of working.
Is that what you use on the stuff that you do now for other projects, such as and we'll get into some of those because they really are fantastic. Like the tarot cards, for instance. Do you still use, or do you use that for those type of projects now?
When I can, and I'm actually in a bit of a renaissance with going back to like materials and media that I haven't tried in years, going back to school. Like for Sand Golem, for example, that reinterpretation, and the backstory for that one too, is that the two kids that are in the sandbox, they're somebody wanted this piece as a present for a friend of theirs who, they both grew up using sand golem, I guess, in their decks, and wanted to surprise them as kind of like a birth announcement or something. They're having twins, and so they got that piece in there. And for that one, instead of using wet paint oil, I just printed out on and I do have a nice high quality printer here at home, printed out on like some durable watercolor paper and using colored pencil and acrylic paint to do it. So it's like dry media on top of it. Again, a little bit faster, but that's when you mentioned like to make the golem itself look like the sand was like, kind of falling off in the cracks, pits, in the surface and everything. That was, dry media that's drawn in on top of it.
I see. Okay, so that's how you give it that dimensional quality that analog art has.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. See, blows my mind. One of the other, like a couple of the other ones. Okay, if I have to say for the record, I love your slivers. I know they're fun. Like,
mm-hmm.
I know they're very simple. They're a very specific design, but they were really smooth in the way they were done. And I don't know, how do you feel about them as far as what was the transition happening for you then as an artist? Was that part of your evolution that you'd rather
mm-hmm.
leave behind, or was that where you see yourself getting more in line with what you were going for?
Those actually represent a time where I started getting more and more comfortable with that hybrid approach. Both of those are hybrids where, in fact, Gemhide Sliver for that one. If you probably can't see it on the card itself because the reproduction is so small, but the actual imagery on there, you can probably see through to like the original graphite drawing I did, scanned in, local color applied with Photoshop, and then painting, the gems primarily on that one. In there, Quilled Sliver, same thing. And in fact, for both of those, just because the sliver is such a weird design to begin with, its anatomy or lack thereof, to help me get a feel on it. I did this with the Weatherlight too, by the way, for that cycle. Anytime somebody asked, the art directors asked, "Hey, we need the Weatherlight in here," I built myself like a little mock-up, of the ship, so I could like tilt, angle it, light it the way I wanted. Same thing for that sliver. I built a little sculpey version of the sliver there. For the Quilled Sliver, I just took toothpicks and kind of stuck them in, posed it the way I want, lit it, shot my reference for it, and then that too is a hybrid where started with some basic color in there and then just painted on top of that.
Do you ever have do you have any examples of, like, not just of I mean, I hope there's still evidence of the toothpick sliver. I hope that's still out there, and if it is, can I see it? But also the way that the process goes from A to B to C, because it's fascinating to a layman like me, seeing how it gets changed into it, because I really, up until now, I truly didn't understand how that kind of hybrid could work. I just assumed it had to be digital or it had to be analog, and you can't mix the two, because how can you do it? It's sort of like, in my mind, is oil and water or vinegar. I can't remember. It was oil and vinegar. But
they don't like to play together. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And so I just thought that was an impossibility, but now, like, I can see why you are a teacher. You're good at it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, in fact, in the last couple of years now, there's a new course I proposed where I teach at MIAD, and it's a class for mixed media, and a lot of the stuff that I've learned and picked up on, I incorporate for that particular course. Meaning, it's all about finding a surface that you feel comfortable with, and of course, your media too. Whatever home base is, how do you get to the point where you can take a little bit of this, a little bit of that, best of all worlds, get them together and feel comfortable with the end result? It takes a lot of R&D, but when you hit upon something, the whole idea is to get to a piece where it's like, I'm back to making a one-of-a-kind original piece of art, as opposed to, if it's a digital, there's gorgeous digital pieces out there, and it's a little different now with this whole NFT thing, but the idea that, well, you can't sell a digital piece as an original. Well, although, again, rules have changed maybe a little bit now, but even so, the whole idea that, and certainly you've seen this happen with, I think, a bunch of current magic artists, where there's such a rush on actual original art.
Oh yeah.
Everybody's going back to the oil, large oil paintings,
Yeah.
because of what they can command for price and everything. There's secondary or ancillary markets for that work. I picked up on that relatively early on, doing magic stuff, realizing that, well, okay, I realize that was one reason for doing the hybrids too. It's like, well, if I ever do want to sell any of these at that time, a digital thing, I can't sell that. I can sell prints, but if I want to sell that original piece, I need an original piece. So
Do you have any of your originals that you've kept yourself?
yeah, quite a few.
Which cards from Magic did you keep for yourself, if you don't mind my asking?
Sure. The ones that I've kept and can't imagine selling for various reasons. I have some of them I've got up on the wall here, but Searing Wind, Wall of Souls,
Okay.
Glaive Master,
Yeah.
Swamp Imp. I always kind of like that little guy. Crypt Creeper. That's one I quite liked, or liked how it turned out. Last Laugh. It's actually a bunch.
Yeah, you've got a library.
Yeah, it's probably in the neighborhood of 15 to 20 pieces that I'll hold on to. But I was a little surprised at the run in that art. Going back, like I said, a couple years ago, and there was a bunch of those things that I'd said, well, I can't imagine anybody wanting, having interest in these. I'd like to touch them up, and I did. And so I probably moved a good 20, 25 pieces that I never thought I would. I brought those things to conventions all the time, and I had $100 written on the back of it, and no takers. So
Right.
it's like, okay, no one's going to want these things, but wow, times change.
Oh God, yeah. No, I've talked to some of the artists from early on. They're like, I can't believe I sold that for that little. I'm like,
I can tell you too, if you're curious. Around the time of Tempest, there was a gentleman who ran a lot of tournaments and events in the Southeast,
Mhm.
and I was going to go out for a pre-release tournament for him at some time, but he was in the know about cards that were coming out. At that time, they were telling artists what the cards actually did. For somebody
Really?
who very, very, very rarely, if ever, played the game, I didn't understand what it was, but this guy knew this card was going to be special. It was Tradewind Rider. And so he bought the piece off of me before it even saw print. And so I just threw a number out there, and it wasn't like chump change, but even so, it's like, if I knew now what I knew then,
Oh, yikes.
Yeah.
See, wow. But that's, what I mean. I wonder now. I know with Magic, they don't tell the artists what are going to be on the cards. I wonder if that's probably the reason, because
Yes.
there's going to be an awareness of what it's going to cost prior to release.
That's exactly it. As I understood it, there were enough artists who understood what these things were going to be, and they would, maybe leak it beforehand. And this is about the time the internet maybe started really taking off. So you can imagine Wizards wasn't too happy with
No,
that.
no, I can't imagine that at all. But you had to have known then about Wheel of Fortune, though, right?
Wheel of Fortune, that came up. Was that even in between sets or something? It was an interesting journey for that one. That too was like a hybrid piece, but I did not understand. There's still a few one-off images, I'll call them. Wheel of Fortune's one of them. Spirit Token, that's around the time of Apocalypse.
Mhm.
Again, I get a lot of the sets confused in my head, but where I didn't understand exactly what the purpose was in the game, what it was used for, or what the history or the power of the thing might be. But yeah, what is the story behind Wheel of Fortune?
Well, Wheel of Fortune is basically, it's one of the big baddies of Magic the Gathering. I think it goes for thousands of dollars. It's the card itself, and what it does is it causes you to discard your entire hand and then draw another 7 cards. And if you play that against somebody where you limit their ability to, if they can't draw more than 1 card a turn, you basically just you win the game, because they're playing 1 card against your 7. It's basically a reset button, and it's a real punch in the gut. If you're playing it, you're just like, I have no cards. like I give up. I
Wow.
lose. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm pretty sure yours is going for around that too. Like I don't know, like it's insanely powerful. So you you got the assignment to do it, and you didn't. That's interesting. You didn't realize that you were being handed off one of the most powerful cards in the entire game.
No, coming at it from my end, just producing the art, and for better or for worse, not tracking as much of like, cards properties, because even then, uh, the only thing I would have known at that time or paid more attention to was the fact that I'm pretty sure this is the case for that one and a bunch of others like Stone Rain, Mermaid, I'm sorry, Merfolk Trident. I think that's the title of that one. That the art was like recommissioned basically to like for
Mhm.
like fifth edition, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, whatever. That was where my focus was on, not realizing maybe what the card could do. Even it's weird too, because especially for Wheel of Fortune, I mean the fans are great. They tell me a lot. When I'm talking to them, if I'm doing like a little sketch or doodle for them for something or signing something, they'll sometimes tell me in great detail about what a card did or how they like won a particular match, and it's so awesome to see how enthusiastic they are. But I'll tell you, I never heard a whole lot back from anybody about Wheel of Fortune.
Really?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
madness. I mean, okay, if you bear with me, I actually want
Sure.
to look and see what it is going for on like the market. I mean, it's okay, it's insane. I mean, yep, 2,800 $2,000 or $2,100. This look like what it's going for. Cheapest you could get it for right now is a mere $1,499 on TCG. So just for
Wow.
just yeah, for a just a cool 1,500, you can get yourself a Wheel of Fortune with your that's the one with your artwork on it. And it's yeah, that's what's happening with that one.
Holy cow. Well, I figured there must be a reason. There's other reasons too that I can explain, but there's a few cards that I rarely, if ever, see, like for people to be signed, to
Yeah.
send in to be signed. Um, that's one of them. I guess I understand why, maybe, that even if they did have one and wanted it signed, better to do it in person rather than risk losing
Yeah.
the mail. So
It's a reserve list card, which means it's not going to be ever printed ever again. There's like a lockdown on it. It cannot be reprinted. There is there's lawyers involved and whatnot. So
mm,
that's why some of the cards like that one, including that one, and there's certain other cards like the infamous Black Lotus, which I think
sure.
sold for $200,000 to I think Post Malone bought one. I mean, that rumor has it, but that is insane.
Yeah.
But I guess people really want to win their game of Magic. I mean, it's a
Here's the funny thing too is that occasionally some of the work that I've done, I'm sure this is true for other artists too. Sometimes we don't get proof cards of things. Like, for example, it's only for these last two, what's it called? Double Masters, Ultimate Masters.
yeah.
They've reprinted, I think it's Mirror Servitor,
Hmm.
and given me proofs of the foil version of those. Never had those before, never got any proofs for Wheel of Fortune.
Ah,
Um,
shit.
yeah,
Ah,
no.
right?
Or there's a few others too where I've been like, oh man, that sure would be nice to get a version of that, because boy, in the back of my head, and something I did for quite a bit was trying to like trade with you know um, gamers for, oh hey, I'll give you a proof or I'll give you a print if you give me some like foreign language versions, for example. Whatever printer they use for, I think my favorite was like the Korean versions of the cards, tend to look, I think, just beautiful compared to some of the other versions. Wherever they had to have their printer
Yeah,
base
okay.
for that is that was kind of fun. And so I have some of those versions, but there's others where it's like, yeah, it'd probably take me a while to track down. And now Wheel of Fortune, huh? Yeah, if I tried to find or maybe I could do a trade for that one too somehow.
Right. I mean, what do you have the Wheel of Fortune painting?
No, I sold it a few years
Oh,
ago. Yeah,
perfect.
in fact, that was probably well before maybe the what I think is maybe such a resurgence in value for these things. But even the drawing I did, it was like two separate pieces. I believe I sold those two. I could do another version of it.
Yeah, I mean, well, here's the thing: people are like, I mean, people are nuts for that kind of stuff. And speaking of nuts, because I'll segue into this, but I know that you are not that you willingly sort of stepped aside to do teaching, and that is what you mainly do. And the responsibilities of magic are very demanding, and you can't risk that affecting your position as a teacher, as a professor. So but with the way that things are going with the secret layers, and they're doing sort of one-offs where the art styles are varying, and
Mhm.
there is a great amount of interest in some of the older magic artists coming back and sort of getting their due. Is there any chance that you would be interested in either getting involved with that or possibly recreating a piece you did? I mean, it's just everybody likes a success story, and I feel
Mhm.
like you should part of that story.
There's not through that. I looked that up on my own when I heard the term once recently. What that was, and occasionally there'll be some offers that come through, and I am never sure. I have to do again my own research onto okay, is this a legit enterprise that somebody wants some artwork for? So there's certainly you got to imagine there's tons of people who are looking to take advantage, or they're not sure what they're getting into, and they realize, hey, I'd like to use your art for this, that, or the other thing. Um, but there's in the last couple of years, yeah, there's been two paintings that I've like re-envisioned. I did Sand Golem for the same guy actually, a different version of that, which I'll be posting pretty soon on a newer website. I'm like redoing what I think you tracked me down through.
Yeah, I
Or
tracked you down through it's got the gray backdrop, I believe, and the photo of you on I mean, I forget, it's the not the
was it called
M,
Matson
not
Works?
MAI, not, yeah,
Okay,
Matson, my
then yeah,
uncle.
that is the newer one then. Okay, so
Okay.
yeah, there's more like magic stuff I'll be adding to that. Uh,
Oh yeah.
Definitely,
Okay. And
including like all the contact information and everything. Most definitely, but yeah, there's a version of that I did. I did a big, to me at least, 18 by 24 is big. Most
that's
of the
big.
paintings I do, by the way, are like very small. But I did a re-envisioning of Tradewind Rider for somebody where he wanted his face like dropped in on the rider, and yeah, that one's souped up quite a bit.
That's cool. I think I would be a gorgeous Auriok glaive master. I mean, we're just strikingly similar in every way. Yeah, just I mean, I think the jagged metal, like what is actually happening in that painting? It's horrific, and yet like really pretty.
Well, thank you.
What I mean, what was the brief? Is that a Mirrodin thing where they're changing into metal, or what's happening to the?
Yeah, there's the description at that time was that the most humanoid race, as I recall, there had metal minerals, whatever, like in their system, and then occasionally manifested by like sprouting or growing or morphing into out of their bodies in some cases. So uh I didn't I wasn't it was a weird kind of description to get. I remember at a convention too, I think I was talking to Ron Spencer. He's a hoot, by the way. But hey, what did you think about this these art prompts for this? And I'm just like, pretty weird, man. Like, yeah, you know, um, because it looks kind of strange. It's I don't know. I put more time in that piece. That's actually a much larger piece, and maybe one of the better examples of that hybrid style I ever did. I
Yeah,
think for magic. But yeah, just called for you know uh, warrior. I'm not even sure if they dictated male or female there, but just kind of leaping through the air there, and yeah, I'd used a friend as a model for that too, at least
and
for
it's
upper body. Yeah.
uh-huh. Oh, so the lower body is someone else
Mhm.
or another
Mhm.
model?
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, kind of
Um,
Frankenstein together. Yeah.
is it that's wow, that's cool. Yeah, no, I like I mean, it's interesting because the androgynous or the otherworldliness, you can't tell if it's attacking or if it's wounded. It's like it's a fascinating thing, I guess, with the color of the sky. I like the choices that you made. It's
Thank
good
you.
stuff. And speaking of good stuff, your newer stuff is mind blowing, and this is the reason why I say you must you must in some way get back involved with magic, at least if to do a guest spot in like a secret lair or something, because your stuff is just matured and you've become like fucking fantastic. I mean, like
Thank you.
it's it's just amazing. And the psychic tarot for the heart.
Mhm.
What does that mean? Because it's the brain and then your heart, right? So how does that work?
All those tarot cards that are featured, again, that's most of those are probably up on the
Mm-hmm.
older site, the Matson art one. I'd started trying to do a few more mainstream projects as an illustrator, even before the teaching thing like really took off. I've been doing it part-time for the longest time and just supplementing my income with that before like it almost completely inverted. But I was contacted by, I had an agent at the time, and they got me in touch with, or this guy like sought me out, a psychic on the East Coast there named John Holland. Brilliant guy, so much fun to talk to, and um, agreed to take on a full tarot deck, 65 images, I think. It's called Psychic Tarot. Uh,
For the
and
heart, yeah.
well, we did this first one, and then based on the success of that one, it got great reviews and sold really well. And it was one of the higher paying jobs I ever did too. It took me longer than I thought it would. It took me over a year to produce all the imagery for that. But based on that, we did a follow up on that. He had a new deck coming out called Psychic Tarot for the Heart, and it was far more invested in like relationships, and a lot of the imagery that I put into those cards, I did what I could to kind of like it was hide like heart motif or imagery in there,
Ah,
in quite a few of the pieces. You wouldn't know it if you didn't like actually look for it sometimes, but that's the best thing about working on imagery like that was that uh, I got to work with him, and we got to see how much we could like throw in symbolism,
oh
in these
yeah.
things. And those represent still. I mean, that they're still some of the high points of my entire career. Each one took quite a lot of time to do. Thousands or maybe not thousands, but hundreds of hours, well, hundreds and hundreds of hours, I would say, to get all
And
those done.
God, and now that you mention it, and now that I'm looking forward, and now that you told me what to look for, I'm seeing so many hearts that are just like, oh, they're right there. And like the one that really struck me was just looking at it right now was, I passed by it unfortunately, refusing to see. Like that heart was just like boom, like right in his I guess cap, the way his cap
Yeah,
sort of with he's
yeah.
bound down. That's cool.
Mhm.
That's cool. I love it. Oh, I get it now. Like you could even I could I'm gonna ramble them off, but in the Seek the Truth, you can see the hearts and in between the two heads. I
Mhm.
mean, is there like do you have like a grand count of how many hearts there are total that you guys like snuck in?
No, no, and I wouldn't be surprised if subconsciously I dropped in a few that I don't even know
That's right.
about.
Yeah, that definitely. And then and another one that I feel like really it's sort of like it's connected at least from a spiritual standpoint was, and I'm gonna probably butcher the pronunciation, but memento vivere, is
Oh
that
yeah.
how
Mhm.
that one is stunning, and there's a story behind that that I think is worth hearing from you. How did that one come about?
Based on the success of that original, actually, it might have been either one of those psychic tarot decks. I was contacted by a gallery director um, who had a gallery in, I believe it was Utah, um, and they were doing a show um, where the theme was, what love is, or it's written up on the website there, which is
Mm-hmm.
nice. We've got some of the info there for. And they asked if I'd like to produce a piece for that, and there were a few specifications on there for like the size of what this had to be. Meaning, I don't think we couldn't even work like proportional. It had to be maybe exactly that size, what they asked for, and the idea was like show what love is to you or
Mm-hmm.
something. And at the time, my mom was in like the middle stages of dealing with Alzheimer's,
Mm.
and um, in that piece, if you take a look at it, it is her hand. I took a photo of her hand there. There's elements thrown in there for representing music. For example, there's like five. It's actually embroidery thread that's like punched through the
Really?
surface and everything. But there's five like green threads coming down. That's the music staff
Mm-hmm.
representing that. There's two halves of the brain down there. Ironically, the um, ah, I forget if it's like, is it proteins or something to do
Ooh.
with genetics? And then honestly, I wish I should really know this, but the ACG that you see repeated like through there
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
has to do with the makeup of the brain, and it just coincidentally has like my brother's family. Their names all start with like either a C, an A, or a G
Oh.
for all of that. So drop that in. The left hand side of the brain there is faded a little bit because that's how I had done some research on Alzheimer's, and that's uh, where that things start to go perhaps a little more wrong at some
Mm-hmm.
point. But I'm in there to a degree. My dad is, and it's very much kind of a family portrait, but um, just representative of it's not what I forget how I worded it now. Actually, on the website, I took time to like word that really carefully. I can't remember most of, exactly how I put it, but basically, it was a reflection of, you know, uh, what my mom represents to us all, and um, yeah, it's another one of these mixed media things where I show that one too as an example of, hey, here's how I went about this, and here's what you can do. Um, but a lot of it was just trial and error, inspirational, um, kind of things along the way. But yeah,
And
that's one that's up on the wall. So
I mean, it's gorgeous, and again, it is so perfect for what they're doing now with these alternate arts that come out with each set, these special editions
mm,
that come out with each set. They're so avant-garde. They don't have to be related to the set at all. Then sometimes this with the new thing with the newest set is called the Mystical Archives, where it's a bunch of old cards thrown in, just sort of like as a for funsies, and they all
oh,
have a
cool.
stylistically different look from
Sure.
the set, and they can really experiment, and it's just it's a cool thing. And I see like these paintings, and it's just like they're you simply must get on the phone with somebody and say, hey, I'm down, because it's just it'd be cool. I mean, to see, and I'm very selfish, so question about like one more thing. One of the or like one more things that I had to ask about later, like naggy, but okay. So the Galaxy of Blood painting that you did, what was the vampire reference that is in there from a film? Because you said there's one in there, and I'm sad that I can't figure it out. It's an embarrassment
Yeah.
as a horror fan.
Oh, it's a little bit of a, I don't know if it's a deep dive, well, deep enough of a dive, I guess. But there was a film that came out in 1985 um, called Life Force.
Oh, John
Directed
Carpenter.
by Toby Hooper, I
Oh,
think.
yeah, Toby Hooper. Yeah, that's right. Okay.
And I remember seeing it. You know, I would have been like, what? I saw it on video, probably when I was about 15 or 16 years old or something. And it's space vampires. There's a beautiful, voluptuous woman who's walking around like, stark naked through, maybe the first half of it. And yeah, it certainly had an impression on a young artist and everything. But one of the astronauts who was like, it's kind of like the reluctant hero of the whole thing. His name is Carlson. And so he's being like
Oh,
tempted and almost like taunted, teased by like the lead, uh, vampire there. And so I just kind of like threw it in there as a reference for, okay, well, if anybody, gets the connection between space, vampire, etc., hey, that's what would come about. And it's explained on the website there too, but this guy had he was more interested in, the client was more interested in like getting some original like werewolf art I'd done for the Rage card game for White Wolf. And I kind of talked him into, hey, could I do a new piece for you? I haven't done horror stuff in a very long time. Can I do something new? And he was on board, and I'm so glad he allowed me to do that because I just had a blast working on that one.
Yeah, that one's like a lot of fun. And oh yeah, I'm looking at it now. Steve Railsback played Tom Carlson. Man, did you
Mhm.
see him play Charles Manson in the 1974 Helter Skelter?
No, but he sounds like it looks like you'd be perfect for it.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, check it out. It was made in the 70s. It's a made for TV movie, but it's really it's so well done. It's so well done. But I digest. The the what was it the robe of mirrors. The flavor line says, "Does this make me look fat?" Was that part of the card when you got it, or did you know that that was going to say that? What was the evolution of that, and how did that come about?
You would have to ask whoever was working on the actual cards at that time. That like when I saw the card printed and saw that flavor text, I'm just like I'm assuming it was like a reaction to the art itself, that it looks like it's a very posy kind of a thing that
Yeah, but
the whole idea of
huh.
like seeing somebody looking at yourself in the mirror or whatever. But
Oh yeah, I
I
guess
have
yeah.
no idea where that came. Yeah, that was never a part of the original description or brief or anything for it. That completely came after the fact.
Oh, because yeah, I thought about it and I was like, well, I mean, I guess like wearing a mirror would be really, it would make me look like it would make me look wider than I am, which would bother me, but it is a very strange
Yeah.
you I mean, but then again, magic sort of like really kind of ran the gamut with strange back in the earlier days. Like there's sort of like anything goes. There wasn't really a sort of like style guide for
Hmm.
flavor either. But that one's really strange. I was like, it's like
Yeah.
I'm like
Because like if you think about it, if you're wearing the robe, that can't be you asking the question, because unless you actually hold up the sleeve in front of you, you're not looking at yourself. However, now that you mention, I have an idea for a new version of that where
ooh.
you get to see the person who's asking that, or I wouldn't do it that way, but I basically see them like fragmented, as they're looking into somebody with the robe who's wearing the robe, and then I'd still have
Ooh.
them change that line maybe, but that'd be oh, believe me, I got tons of ideas on how I'd redo, a few images.
Well, that's see now. I'd hate for you to give out your ideas, but I'm curious about maybe a couple of them. I mean, maybe ones that you probably won't get around to for whatever time reasons, purposes, but like are still percolating. And besides, it's not like I mean, people can't. I mean, people could try to steal it, but I'd be like, yeah, we kind of talked about it during an interview, so yeah.
Well, yeah, it's a thing. You can't copyright, an idea,
Yeah,
but
but we can embarrass the shit out of them and make them just go to hell. That
right,
well,
too true.
proverbially.
Yeah, there's a couple I've been working on. When I find time, it is that spirit token thing. They had to Photoshop the heck out of that one, uh, because I either I didn't understand it, or the description wasn't all that great for what that thing was supposed to be. It's like a flying, kind of angel type person, and I think it's got great potential. I'm breaking out like the older oil paints for things, and learning some new techniques and everything. And yeah, I'll be trying that much larger, and maybe putting that on the market, seeing how it goes. Pirage of Urborg, I've got a much better idea of how to go about that for like a full
Ooh,
figure, like kind of like reclining, setting sun, very kind of like moody colors, violets, blues, a little bit of orange accents in there. Uh,
yeah.
um, at some point though, uh, there's also like more original like art that I'd like to do, kind of like my own thing. There's a,
Hmm.
there's no shortage of pieces I've got where it's like, well, I always meant to go back in and like touch this thing up, that thing up. But I realized, well, yeah, you could do that and make something that represented you back then look really good. Or what defines you right now? What do you mean to do right now to like
Yeah, that's the tough part, huh?
yeah, it is. It finding, because it all takes time, and time gets. I have like my summers open, of course, to like really dive into new ways of exploring media, you know being very picky and choosy about the work that I'd like to represent and everything. Ooh, although I will say another one I'd add into the mix of redoing is Sea Singer from,
Ooh.
I think that's 5th edition.
Mhm.
If only because the original art for that's like destroyed. It's
Oh,
Yeah, I was using that paint in a very not good way, I'll say, and it just kind of like puckered and turned brown, and it's a shame. That was one of my favorite images at that time, and I'll probably
and
redo that one maybe at some
and you
point.
can and it can't be like there's no way to salvage it if you took it to like a person who specialized in art like restoration. Is that, or is that just something that would be too cost prohibitive?
Yeah, it's the only thing that's going to save that one is a belt sander, to like get that surface like shaved down and everything. And that one too, that's pre-digital stuff, so that'd have to be from the. Well, actually, no, I could do it as a hybrid now, I suppose. But I still have like my original reference photos. One of my cousins modeled for that one, and that might be maybe I make a few changes in there too for the environment, or maybe give her some armor or
Yeah.
something. I don't know. But
There's definitely, because Drew Tucker did. We talked a lot about how he did a lot of the similar things where he had either like, for instance, one of the pieces was literally stolen,
ooh,
and then another, yeah, a couple of guys that I've talked to, him and Anson Maddox had their original stolen. Uh,
yikes!
yeah, but they either do reinterpretations or in a sense recreations, or it's like at the same like space, like for instance, like it would be the same landscape but from a different POV, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And so that's the kind of stuff they did, and there's a huge market for it. There's a
yeah,
huge market for it because people are like obsessed with like the world of this. Like for instance, like I mean, hopefully nobody wants to maybe hang out in this place, although I will say I kind of am digging the lighting behind me. I mean, like the yellow, like it's
yeah. It's very dramatic. Yeah,
yeah,
you
I'm
look like
like, I
you
feel,
belong in that space. Actually, it's pretty cool.
I know, not gonna lie, kind of picked the outfit out a little bit to match up with it. And I did maybe do the makeup a little bit, but yes, what can I say? I'm a diva. But and we're almost done. You're almost done with the horror. One more thing that I have to reference. I have to congratulate you. I heard, and I don't want to say who, but you had something said to you in an interview that to me struck me as one of the most horrific things I've ever heard in my entire life. Was that
Oh,
the person said art does not have an evolutionary purpose, and it shattered me when I heard that. I was like, but, 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 and you said that there was a time when you had a teacher that you were in school, and they said, they came in and they asked your class. They
oh,
said, do you think art is use? Do you think art is purposeless or useless? I can't remember the exact thing you talked about,
yeah,
but do you remember that anecdote?
yeah. It was my ninth or 10th grade. Might have been an AP English class or something, and maybe just to like kind of shock us. Might have been a Monday morning, probably no. Um, said, "I've got a thought for you all." And this is a really eccentric guy. I mean, everybody kind of secretly loved the guy for just how kind of off the wall he was. But he just put it out there. I want you to think about something. Uh, Art is useless or something. And he said, "No, I'm not saying it's worthless, but it's useless." And and of course, we're all aghast at it. Just like, dude, we're like going to a high school for the arts and everything.
Right,
Can't you be kicked out for saying something like this? I mean, you're
right.
kind of
It's
bringing down the mood here. And yeah, I'm at the time, I wasn't quite sure, like, what to make about that because
well, I
for
think it's
anybody who's
wrong.
yeah, well, anybody who's interested in the arts, they have so much invested, and probably that there's ego involved too,
Right.
for because it represents so much of who we are, how we express ourselves, that we can get extremely defensive about it. But that's not necessarily, you don't want to just have a knee-jerk reaction to it too. The whole idea was to get us to think about it, in terms of like, well, what, and it's not that hard to think about things that art can be used for, right?
Yes.
For
Yes.
you know uh inspiration. It tends to be very polarizing. There's people who are going to love something, there are people going to be on the complete opposite end. And just like taking or hearing a statement like that, if you are in the public eye, if you do work professionally, you have to temper a lot of your like reactions. You can't have a gut reaction. That whole adage of, you only have one chance to make a first impression on somebody. It's absolutely true, and so you have to kind of be careful with how you respond to that kind of stuff. Thinking about it, I wish I would have had a better answer at the time, but yeah, it certainly got me to think.
Yeah, well, I mean, you seemed like, I mean, I was stunned. I was impressed that you were able to respond with that anecdote. And it is a good point. The guy, he asked the question, it's shocking. And what it made me do, rather, what made, when I heard that art has no evolutionary purpose, I was like, gonna check some science books about that one. And as it turns out, it does. It has, there are paleontologists, paleontologists who are actually under the impression that because of the fact that we did cave paintings, that was what separated us from the Neanderthals and gave us an edge on being able to successfully approach and or hunt animals. And
Hmm.
that's one of the reasons we, kind of had a one up,
Right.
as well as like that. So that right there, I'd be like, and so that was what made me question when he said, was art useless or purposeless? I was like, no, it's not, because it's not useless because it did that, which means it's got a purpose. So I was able to make peace with that. But oh, that was such a gut punch. I was like, wow, you handled that with grace. I just was just like, it was true. I was like, it's like, I mean, you could just been like, all art is shit, and I'd be like, okay, I'm done. Like, I don't know how to respond to that, buddy.
I have to ask now too. Are you interested in the arts? Do you?
I am art based. I am a photographer and
Oh,
musician,
awesome.
and that's sort of, and writer. And that's sort of, I got my master's in English education. So I'm all arty farty. And then I come from a family of hard science. So I'm sort of like,
Wow.
yeah, I'm the strange bird in I have my grandfather was a doctor, my dad's a doctor, and then I come out and I'm like, I can play like perfect pitch, and they're like, huh? So they're getting used to it now. I think now that I'm approaching 40, they're like, okay, we're okay with him being an artist now. It's all right. They've made peace with it, and now they're open to it. But it was very much a what the hell is the boy up to kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, it's usually, I think it's in the back of a lot of people's heads who have a career, any type of career invested in the arts, even teaching to a degree too. It's like, what are you passing on to the next generation? And hearing it sometimes from people who would say it right to your face, "Oh, you poor dear, you're going to starve." If you go into the arts, it's something that's like, okay, well, after you hear it a few times, and if you live the life and find the right kind of inspiration, people, mentors, you
Hmm.
know, um, it can be done. Clearly it can be done, and beyond that too, something I tell my seniors quite a bit. Like, it's usually like the last night of the semester, they're going to graduate in just a few days, and everything. It's like, uh, remember what you're doing at this time, even if down the road your life is going to change so much, you don't even know it yet. The fall is going to roll around, you're going to be like, something's different. Oh, you're not in school anymore.
Right.
And realizing that you might start a family, you might do something else, but don't forget, if you can possibly do it, to keep doing the art. It's going to do more than maybe necessarily just provide income for you. It's going to feed your soul to a degree. If you if it's part of your life for that long, you've invested literally, metaphorically, so much into it, you have to do it to satisfy some part of you, or pass it along,
Right.
to your family, or whatever. That's where the really, really, truly fulfilling part of it all comes in. So
There is sort of an alchemy to it, because if you do
yeah.
not take that energy and put it either into the creation of art, or like you were saying, to the nurturing of the next generation of artists, you're gonna get like spiritual constipation.
Mm, ouch, yeah.
It's like you're gonna be clogged up, and there's only one way that can end.
Yeah, and it's painful. So
Exactly. So before I let you go, I just wanted to make sure that if there was anything that you wanted to talk about that you were doing that you wanted to promote, I know you're busy with all the stuff that you've mentioned, but if there's anything that I did not discuss, feel free to let us know.
um, no, I don't think so. There is one kind of cool thing that I've noticed, just in terms of like the day job here, that I have, um, is that in the last few years, things have opened up. The whole idea of fantasy art in general always used to have a bit of a stigma attached to it. Certainly at
Right.
the time that I got into the industry and everything, it's uh, you'd have to hunt to find, like, in a bookshop or bookstore or whatever, like, examples or artists who specialize just in that. And of course, things have exploded to astronomical degrees for that kind of stuff, to the point where I get to teach like a fantasy art course
That's awesome.
at my ad. And in fact, it's popular enough, and the illustration department too, where I'm in, is huge. That the number of students who commit, to illustration as the major, it like almost doubles or maybe even triples, like maybe some of the other majors we have. It's amazing. But having opening up extra sections of some of this stuff for the demand. 2 years ago now, or 2 Novembers ago, I get my semesters and years mixed up sometimes. But there was a traveling show for Magic called Story and Craft, a Magic the Gathering kind of a thing. It was curated by a gentleman named Mike Lindemann.
Yes,
And
Mike, I will. He's going to be so happy. He loves being shouted out.
that's awesome. Yeah, he um, ran a there was at least one other location for this was overseas. I believe in Japan, maybe. But
Hmm.
we got it at my ad, and um, I was asked, even though I wasn't like I was only interim full time, I think at the time, but I was asked to kind of like join the gallery committee at school there and kind of help facilitate a few things. I got Mike to sit in on one of my sections for fantasy art right after like a presentation he had done at the school. We had a bunch of other like visiting artists come in and everything. Jeff Miracola, he's a superstar.
Hmm.
Um, and they also flew somebody in from Pacific Northwest. And oh God, I'm afraid I can't remember her name right now. But that was awesome. And again, it's one of those things where I never thought I'd see the day where it's this popular, and that our galleries here at school would have this. It was freaking fantastic. So
Yeah, that's the thing. And I mean, and I will leave you with this: like, do seriously take into consideration that uh, there is interest. This is sort of a really cool time to be somebody who is involved with it in any sense, because it's a great time to be new, and it's a great time to be from the
the
history
old,
of the game. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I like old is. I mean, I don't want it to have the pejorative, but like there is, in it, like you were saying, there is now, like, unlike back in the day, fantasy art was back in the day. It was not, quote unquote, it was not real art. It was,
hmm hmm
it clearly is real art. The types of talent that it takes to do these pieces is clearly, uh, you know, it's it's comparable to any other like form of art out there that would be considered masterworks.
yeah,
I mean, like, look, I love a Jackson Pollock, but just saying. But the just it's really cool that now it's being treated as something that it really should have been, which is just like it is a legit art form, and it's an exciting
sure.
time for you guys to be represented. So I would love to see you back in just some way, shape, form.
Yep, making steps towards that end. It's fun. I enjoy being able to, like I say it a couple times, being able to pick and choose, like, where I and how I navigate that. Just the time is the most crucial part of that all. And there's a plan in place, knowing and hearing from so many people about what's available out there. It's choosing what to do with that time. It sounds all Gandalf and Hobbit right there. Uh, you know,
Well, it's not the worst person you can sound like. I mean,
no, no, definitely not. So,
yeah, right. You could have like you don't want to sound like Smee, 'cause that would be
right.
not a good thing. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking your time today. I had a great time.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
My pleasure. Yeah, great to talk to you. This was a lot of fun.
Okay. Have a good one.
Okay, you too. Yep.
And there you have it. John really should be jumping back into the MTG game. And while all of you are watching, I learned a thing or two about art. Did you know the top-selling paintings of all time is Da Vinci's Salvator Mundi, which sold for $450 million? Stunning. And check out the portrait of Adele Bloch-Weyer, which sold for $135 million. Look at that craftsmanship. And how about Kazimir Malik's Suprematist composition, which sold for $85 million? Really? Oh, that's gotta be a typo. This thing outsold Titian's Diana and Callisto by 10 million? That thing looks like the bed sheets from Full House. Wow, I really know nothing about art. Well, that's all for now. I'm gonna go draw some rectangles and squares and see if I can make enough to buy my own island. So until next time, I gotta scoop.